In my recent blend modes video, I did a horizon text effect and I did it as a time lapse. So a lot of people were asking me, how did I do that? Because I just glanced over the whole process. Well, in today's video, I'm going to break it down for you. Hello my friends, Rob here from Button Press Graphics, back with another Inkscape tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do the horizon text effect. So without further ado, let's get started. Now the first thing I'm going to need to do is, of course, create some text. So we're going to go over to the left hand toolbar and we're going to select our text tool. Once we have our text tool selected, we can select anywhere on the canvas and it will bring up a cursor. Now for this, I'm just going to write the text horizon. So now we have our text. I am just going to use my select tool and then hold Control and Shift in order to scale it up and keep the proportions exactly the same. Now that it looks exactly how I want it to, we can go to our text editor and we can choose the font that we want to use. It is going to be better if you use a font that is very thick. So I'm going to open my text editor by coming down to this toolbar and selecting the letter T, which says Open Text. This is going to open up our text editor box right here. Now yours might look a little bit different than mine because I am running the 1.4 beta version of Inkscape. If you are running a previous version, it will give you all of the fonts that you can choose, and then you will have to choose the style on the right hand side. But fear not, the same principles will remain. I'm going to try and find a big, thick, bold font. And there we go. I'm going to choose Impact Regular because the Impact font seems to be very, very good. And as you can see, it is quite thick as well, which is exactly what I am looking for. Now I'm just going to move this into the center so it's easier to see. And also, depending on the font that you are using, the spacing in between the letters might be too much or not enough. So if you want to change this, you can go back to your text tool and up on the top properties toolbar, right here, you will get all these options. These are going to tweak the spacing between your letters, your words, etc., etc. Now for this one, I can go to this far left option, and this is the spacing between letters. Now it goes in units of pixels by default. So if you add a minus value in here, say -10, as you can see, it groups them all together far more. But if we was going in the opposite direction and we say go to +20, as you can see, it is now a lot more spaced out. So the -10 seems around good for me, so I'm just going to replace that. And now I have the text that I'm looking for. Now the next thing I want to do to this text is I want to make sure that it's slightly bent so it arcs from the left to the right going across. So in order to do that, we're going to need to use a path effect, the bend path effect. Now I've already covered this in a previous tutorial, so if you are interested, I will leave it linked up in the top right corner if you want to check that out. Now in order to get the path effects open, you need to go to path and then all the way down to path effects ... This is now going to open up your path effects menu. Now this is still a text object, it is not a path. So we now get the option here to convert it into a path. Alternatively, you can go to path, object to path. And as I did that, you saw this option disappear. Now we're going to click the drop down and we're going to select bend, which is in the distort section. Now with bend selected, we have these options. All we are going to need to use is the node tool. So selecting the node tool on the left hand side, we can then press this button, which is Edit on Canvas, and that will turn the line green. Now this is your bend path. This works in much the same way as using the pen tool. You can click and drag to move it in any way that you see fit. If you wish, you can also add a new node by double clicking anywhere on the green line. But for now, that looks around perfect for me. If you like, you can still tweak using these handles so you can get it more curved on one side if you wish, or you can have it waving like that. But from what I want, I'm just going to leave it exactly like this. Once you are done and you have it looking exactly how you want, you go to Path, Object to Path, and that will finalize all the edits that you've made. Now next, what we want to do is we are going to add an offset to this. But before we get there, we need to obviously add a background to it as well. Now in order to do this, we can add the offset by duplicating this text. So I'm going to right click, duplicate, and then I'm going to change the color to something that will contrast a lot more with the black. Now I'm going to go to Path, Dynamic Offset, and now we only have one node. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this down, leaving a very thin border between the two. And that looks about perfect to me. Now with that done, again to finalize, go to Path, Object to Path. Now we are going to do the same yet again. We are going to duplicate, and then we are going to go to Path, Dynamic Offset, change the color and reduce this slightly more. Again, we only want to leave a small gap, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Something around there would be sufficient. Again, finalize by going Object to Path. Lastly, we want to take the black text. So in order to do that, we are going to use our select tool. Try and select it, but if you are having trouble selecting it, you can either zoom straight in and select it that way, or you can hold Alt on the keyboard and press it until you get the black selection. Once you have it, you can then right click and duplicate. But this time we are going to change this to another color, and we are just going to simply reduce the size from the top ever so slightly, just like this, and then we are going to hold Shift and increase the width ever so slightly too. Now with that done, we can then hold Control and slide it down a little bit. And now we're going to drop this to the very bottom. We can do that by going to these four icons at the top and selecting lower selection to the bottom. And now we have something that looks like this. Finally, now we start making the edits that we want to make to stop this looking very flat and basic. Firstly, we need to create the horizon. So for the horizon, I'm going to use my circle and ellipses tool right here on the left hand side. And now I'm going to click and drag until I get a very stretched circle over the horizon text. Now for this bit, we can lower the opacity so it's easier to see and get the placement correct. To do this, we are going to need our fill and stroke menu open. Now you can double click on these colors here, or you can go to this toolbar and select this button, Open Fill and Stroke. Once open, you will get the opacity bar at the bottom, and you can simply drop it down and change the color if you wish. Now with that done, I am going to go back to my select tool and I'm going to get the position absolutely perfect. And if you need to warp and change the size, you can do exactly that. If you want it to match up perfectly, then you can select this select the text, and then open up your Align and Distribute menu. Again, this is one that can be opened up by selecting this button right here. Now with the last selected from the drop down, I can simply move it along with this button so it is equal on both sides. Now what I want to do is I want to get this circle sort of carving a path just in between this point of the N and this point. So I'm going to click this circle and drag it down ever so slightly until I get exactly what I'm looking for. And I think that is around perfect. Now I'm going to use this circle and the yellow text that you can see right here to carve the horizon. So first we select the circle, then we select the horizon text by holding Shift when we click on it, and then we go to Path, Intersection. And now it has taken all the intersecting parts from the circle and the text and cut it down so it sits perfectly within the text. Now in order to get this to look absolutely perfect, what we're going to do is we're going to add a gradient onto this one and then add a base color onto the red. So I'm just going to go with the branding colors, obviously different shades of blue. I'm going to select the red text, and then I'm going to go to my fill and stroke menu, select the blue that I like, and now we have something that looks like this. Now because we are using the 210 hue and we are using half the saturation, I'm going to select this, keeping them numbers in mind, and I'm going to use the 210 hue again. But now that I've selected the hue, I'm going to go to a linear gradient, but a radial gradient will work just as well. And I'm going to move the start point to the top and the end point to the bottom, and I'm going to hold Control to lock it vertically, just like so. And now I am going to use the darker color on the top and the lighter color on the bottom. So now we have the full saturation. I'm going to lower the brightness to around half. I'm going to turn this all the way up because the opacity is defaulted to 0. And now I'm going to reduce this all the way down to a very light blue. Now if you want to switch the colors around, make the top a lot lighter and the bottom a lot darker, you can select this little arrow icon here and it will switch the colors that you have here. As you can see, the difference is very noticeable, but I prefer it when you get a much more contrasting line at the top. And once you have the colors, you can obviously change to a radial gradient if you think that that might look better. Now with the radial gradient, it works slightly differently. We have the start point or the focal point in the center. If I put this down in the center right here, we can then change the height and the width of that circle. So if we move this up to the top and then we move this one out, because we have the curve, this gives a much more convincing gradient going across. So that is how I'm going to leave it, and you can of course tweak the colors if you think it needs to be a lot darker, lighter, or even if you want to change the color to something way different. And as you can see, you can get some very cool effects depending on your color choice. Now for me, I think that looks pretty good. We have the base color without any gradient in the back. We have the horizon at the front, and now we have the drop shadow behind. But we can go further. We can now add an actual shadow behind the text and in between the text and this blue area here. Now this blue area doesn't look quite right because there is no contrast to the rest of the colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use maybe a fuchsia, something that will contrast very, very well. And now I'm going to select the black text and I'm going to duplicate that. So now we can just drag this down ever so slightly, so it's not going further than the fuchsia color that we have, but you will be able to see it behind the rest of the text. Now with that done, I'm going to up the blur, and then we are going to drop it down to the bottom and raise it one step. We can do that by using the select tool, drop down to the bottom, come to this one which is raise one step, and then we get this effect. Now that looks a little bit dark, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to also drop the opacity. And if you wish, you can also change the color of the black to white, which will make the shadow stand out even more. So we take this color and we turn that white. And now we have something that looks like this. I suggest playing around and maybe changing the colors up and seeing what colors you can come up with. But the possibilities are literally endless. There is also one extra step you can take which will add a little bit of polish and a little bit of flair to your design, just by adding a few solar flares. Now you can do this by simply going to your polygons tool, which is right here on the left hand side. Select that, make sure you have star selected, and then do around 6 corners. Now with that done, we can click and drag to create a star that looks a little bit like this. Now I want the points to be a lot sharper, so I'm just going to take this little node in near the center and I'm going to drag that in, holding control while I do so, so it looks more like this. With that done, we can finalize this by going to Path, Object to Path. Now as you can see, if I take this and I move it over, it is still slightly opaque. So I need to turn this up in the fill and stroke menu. With it selected, I can then turn the opacity all the way up, and I want this to be a bright white. So I'm going to select white down here, and now we have our white star. Now I'm just going to reduce the size of this ever so slightly, like so, because we don't want it to be too big, but something around that size will work. Now I'm just going to decide where I want to place these, and once I am done, I'm just going to hit the space bar, and I'm only going to add 2 or 3, one there, one there, and then I will just let go of the left click and have one right there. Now the reason I've done this is so I can hold shift, select all 3 at the same time, and then add a slight blur. And then I'm going to drop the opacity back down. So it is very, very subtle. And finally, I am going to click off everything so I can deselect it all, and then select and select again to get the rotation handles up, and I'm just going to move them ever so slightly and make them varying in size, and get the placement where I want it. And just like that, it looks like you have the light reflecting off the horizon line. And there you have it, my friends. That's how you can create the horizon text. Did you know that you can become a member of the Button Press Graphics YouTube channel? Well, now you do. You will get a lot of added benefits and you will directly support the channel, enabling me to make much better content in the future. Also, you can send in your artwork into the Creative Corner. This is a regular section where I will showcase your work in a future video. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell and I will see you next time.